All right, we can go home now. We know everything about you. I'm just
All
kidding.
right.
I am just kidding. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope that you are inspired by this show. Welcome to Michelle's Inspiration Hour. Today we have a superb and exciting guest, Rich Lewis. He is, when I read his book, I was going, hey, this is all about me. I know life doesn't evolve around me, but let me go and read about him so that everybody will know about Rich before we actually have this wonderful conversation. So, Rich Lewis is an author, speaker, and coach who focuses on centering prayer as a means of inner transformation. He teaches centering prayer in both his local and virtual community and offers one on one coaching. Rich's newest book is titled Sitting with God, A Journey to Your True Self Through Centering Prayer. He has been a daily practitioner of centering prayer since 2014. Centering prayer has been so life giving and life changing that he feels compelled to share his journey with others who wish to learn more. And we are so glad that you did, Rich. So, my first question is okay, what inspired you to go ahead and write this book? And I know that you have been trying to get the word out by going to a lot of podcasts. And so, tell us how you got started in this.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. So, what inspired? You start with centering prayer, or what inspired the book? Obviously, centering prayer came first, and then the book came after that.
Right, right. Yeah. So definitely start with centering prayer.
Sure. So, centering prayer, I guess I had always been attracted to silence. I just didn't know what to do in the silence. And I had read books by Carl McColman, a number of his books in 2011, 2012. He talked a lot about contemplative prayer and silence and how powerful and transforming it was. I don't remember him mentioning a practice. I've since learned he actually does practice centering prayer. And maybe if I went back and looked at the books, maybe I'd see him mention it, but I don't recall at that time. I didn't recall it. So then I would just sit in silence for minutes at a time. And I remember it being brutal and painful. But I would make myself do it, and I would set a
Mhm.
timer for 1 minute or 2 minutes. So I guess the idea of silence and how powerful it was, I had started reading a lot about it through some of the books of Carl McColman. But it wasn't until late 2013 I was perusing Amazon looking for a book to read, and I came across Healing the Divide: Recovering Christianity's Mystic Roots by Amos Smith. And as I began reading, and I got the Kindle version, as I began reading it, he talked about a practice called centering prayer that was wordless, silent prayer that he had been doing for some 15 years. So that immediately intrigued me because I knew I was looking for something. I just didn't know what it was. So I began trying it for myself. I reached out to him and we began a back and forth email dialogue. And I began reading other books on centering prayer by other centering prayer practitioners. And it was just a practice that resonated with me. It made sitting in silence easier because it was centering prayer is really, and we can talk about it as a practice and teaches you how to open to the silence and how to open to God who is in the silence. So that's really how I came. So I guess I'd always been attracted to silence, and I mean, I have friends and I like socializing, but I also
Right.
don't mind being alone. I didn't mind being in nature. I didn't mind riding bikes by myself. I didn't mind exercising by myself. So solitude I enjoyed anyhow, and I
Mhm.
just knew there was something to the silence. And even my prayer life, I thought it was kind of one dimensional and lacked depth. I just felt like I was just going through the motions. So it was really centering prayer helped me start diving at the
Mhm.
diving, I guess, like a submarine into the depths of the ocean of silence. So that's kind of a little bit about that, and I'll pause there because I know then you asked about the book, but I'll pause there.
Oh, well, and yeah, and that's wonderful because and I know that the book came next, but absolutely, I think it is so important. I know there's different ways that we pray, and I know that the purpose of, sitting with God, centering in the prayer, it's more to, connect in. And I will let you know real quick, and then we'll go on. I actually, before we came on, I thought, I do meditate, and I thought I'm going to do it the way that he describes it in the book, okay? Where I talk, and then God talks, and then we are silent, okay? And so, okay, so then I start talking to God, and I tend to do this, with meditation. And so I thought I was done talking, and then I'd start listening to him. And then I started talking again. I'm going, okay, I keep talking. I'm not allowing him to talk. So you're right. It does take practice, to clear that mind so that when you are done talking, you need to give God a chance to connect with you and give you those messages that you need. And then the silence. And I think that is so powerful. So, yeah, so go ahead and tell us about your book. What made you say, you know what? This has really changed my life. So, I'm going to go ahead and write a book and let everybody else know about it.
Sure. And then at some point we should probably just share what is centering prayer and how you do it,
Right.
because people are probably just curious. Well, how do you do this? Since I mentioned now I
Exactly.
had a method or practice for practicing silence, whereas previously I didn't. So the
Right.
book, I'll blame it on Amos Smith, but I'm being funny when I say that. I had read his book and we became friends. And I initially was working with him off of his website, and I continue to do that, but I
Mhm.
have my own website as well. He actually nudged me to write a book. So at the time, he had his book was out in 2013. Book. He thought I had an important voice. He thought it would be something for the kind of the everyday person rather than coming from his, the perspective of he was a pastor, and he said his book was more academic and maybe more theological. So he thought he challenged me to write a book. So at the time, I thought he was crazy because I had never really written anything of any
Mhm.
length. I guess even in college, I didn't have to do a whole lot of writing, but I kind of asked him, well, how do I do this? What do I do? And he said, take a week and just write down single sentence statements of what centering prayer means to you.
Mhm.
So I did, and then I remember sending him back in an email, and then I think I had about 13 or 14 single sentence statements, and his response was, "There you go. There's the chapters of your book. Go write." Well, I still wasn't convinced but I decided, okay, well, I'll pick one of them and just write a chapter and then send it to him, and I did that, and it took a couple weeks, and I remember sending it to him, and even in my mind, I was thinking, he's going to think this is terrible, and this will be the end of this, and then we'll just kind of move on from there. And to my surprise, he liked it and thought it was
Oh,
fresh, and
good.
said, you need to continue. You need to write a book. So then when I heard that, I thought maybe I should write a book. So I kind of talked to my wife, and I said, would you be all right if I wrote a book? And my wife said, sure. I mean, my wife said she is an entrepreneur, so
Okay.
she was all in terms of me doing it. So then I decided, well, I didn't want to take time away from the family because I had a wife and I had 3 kids. So I
Mhm.
decided to discipline myself, just like centering prayer is a discipline where you do the practice, and I do it twice a day. I decided I would get up on Saturday mornings, and I actually went to the local Starbucks. This was all pre-COVID, and wrote from about 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., 10 a.m. at the local Starbucks on Saturday morning, and then
Wow.
came home and then could do stuff with the family the rest of the day. And that's mostly how the book got written. Some writing was done at other times, but probably 75% of the book was written at the local Starbucks pre-COVID on Saturday mornings. But it was Amos nudging me, and then Amos saying, you really should do this, and then me
Mhm.
thinking, maybe he's right. And then and I'm glad I did. It was a wonderful experience, and because really each time I sat down to write, I didn't know exactly. I had ideas of what I wanted to say, but I didn't know what was going to happen. So that was kind of a fun spiritual practice, was to sit
Mhm.
down, open up the laptop, take a sip of coffee, and then just let it flow. And what do I think I need to say? Here's the chapter, kind of the main theme, but what am I going to say? And just let it come out of me. So that's how I found centering prayer. And then it was Amos who nudged me to write a book, and I'm so glad he did, because the book came out in August, 2 years ago. It came out in August of 2020.
Oh, that's awesome. And okay, so tell us about what it means to center in prayer. What does that mean? Or how do
Sure.
you do that?
Sure. So why don't I quickly, centering prayer has been around for 50 years. It was created in the early 1970s by three Trappist monks, or three Catholic priests, saw other forms of meditation happening and they wanted something for the Christian community. So one of them, Father William Meninger, was reading a 14th century book called The Cloud of Unknowing. He read this classic book, kind of a method of silent, wordless prayer, jumped off the pages as he read it, and he began talking with the two other priests. They began practicing it themselves. They began rolling it out to other clergy and then the public. And then in 1984, about 10 years later, the Contemplative Outreach organization was created. They have a website, contemplativeoutreach.org. It's really the main centering prayer organization with a ton of resources, groups that practice either at a location or via Zoom all throughout the US, as well as internationally. So that's a little bit of the history. So it's a 50-year practice, and it's
Wow.
considered two things. It is considered meditation, but it's also considered fostering a relationship with God, because during centering prayer, we believe we're opening to the presence and actions of God within us. So we don't believe we're God, but we believe there's the divine image is within us, kind of waiting to be expressed into the world. So how you do the practice is you sit comfortably with your eyes closed. Then to begin your silent sit, you interiorly introduce say what we call a sacred word of one or two or maybe three syllables. It could be God, love, ocean, and that signifies you're beginning your sit and you're opening to the presence and actions of God within. And then as you're sitting there, when you begin engaging your thoughts, and what I mean by that is when you begin thinking about all the things you did before your sit, or you begin thinking about all the errands and duties and responsibilities you have later that day after your sit, you realize you're sitting with you. You're not sitting with the present moment. You're not sitting with God. You're sitting with you. You reintroduce interiorly that sacred word, let go of your engaged thoughts, and then even let go of the word. So it's a continuous return to the present moment where God is during this time. And you just use that word when needed. So you don't use it as a mantra. You just use it when you notice you're engaging your thoughts. And sometimes you naturally catch yourself and bring yourself
Mhm.
back. And then the last thing I'll say is you don't have to use a word. I started with a word. A word is more so for auditory people. I'm more of a visual person, so I picture an interior image in my head, and I don't paint it out, but I think of it. And I think of a Jesus icon that I came across in an email of Richard Rohr. He sends out daily meditations, and one of them had the Jesus icon that kind of caught my attention. So I kind of think about that image to return to the present moment. Some people use their breath. And
Oh,
lastly,
right.
some people don't want to close their eyes. They worry they'll fall asleep. So they keep their eyes open and just stare at a spot, perhaps 5 or 6 feet on the floor or in the distance, just to keep in the present moment. So that's a little bit about the history
Yeah.
of it,
Right.
as well as how you do it. And then you can do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, but you essentially follow those guidelines during that duration.
I love it. And, whenever I started reading your book, I was going, I wish I had this 20 years ago because I actually started meditation practice and I am a Christian. And a lot of people were going, oh, Michelle, no, no, meditation, no. God's going to strike you down, that kind of thing. You're going to open the door. You're going to go, to hell and I'm going, but when I meditate, I pray. So, I mean, it's almost the same. That's what I was doing. And so I think everybody, even though we say we meditate the same, everybody, it's different, right? But whenever I do meditate, I am centering with God. I'm doing a prayer and then I do listen. It does take practice. And I love how you make everything, it's the terminology, everything that I learned from meditation in the original, what am I trying to say? The original sense without the Christianity. The terminology is different, but we're doing the exact same thing. And I love how you use the scripture and the verses in the book because it makes God a loving God and not one that's going to strike you down for trying to meditating and finding the peace in it. So I do want to thank you for, getting that book out and your knowledge and everything because several times you said, yeah, you need to set your intention, like, trust the silence. letting go. And what do we always say is let go, let God, take over, take over the wheel, I guess you could say, and let God love you. And I mean, that's the same thing that everybody does in meditation, is letting go and letting the source comes in. So the terminology is a little bit different, but to me, what do you think? Do you think we're doing the same thing in
No, I
meditation?
do. No,
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I think we are. Some people will say, "Well, what's the difference between centering prayer?" And I say, it is meditation. It's
Mhm.
just for me, it's also deepening my relationship with God. So I am meditating, but I'm meditating so that I can open to God within me, and I'm letting go of engaged thoughts. So I'm not pondering anything, and as soon as I begin pondering, I let go of my pondering. So it's
Mhm.
really just sitting, as my book says, sitting with God. Centering prayer is
Right.
just sitting with God, and that's it, and letting go of your thoughts. And I think of it as a reverse prayer. I think of it as God is praying in me what God knows I need, whether it's inner peace or calm or wisdom or nudges to get out of my comfort zone. So it's just me sitting with God and getting myself out of the way and letting God act in me during this time.
I love it. I love it. And the one thing also, what I was going to bring up is, you know, again, this is Christian meditation, and you don't have to think that, because I think we get so busy and we kind of lose that connection with why we are here, what our purpose is, and finding our true selves. And you can do that through this meditation. So how did you find what, not only find your true self, but how do you define it?
Sure. I think of my true self as the person God wants me to be. And that's what happens, or we discover or centering prayer helps us discover it, is because we're letting go of our engaged thoughts and many things, such as we tell ourselves, I'm not confident, or I'm the wrong person for that task, or I'm afraid to try that. We tell ourselves things that are just not true. So we let go of who we are not and all the things we tell ourselves so that we can become who we are. So buried underneath all of the clutter of emotions, whether it's fear, anxiety, worry, lack of confidence, or even just being flat out scared to try something, underneath that is your true self, and the person that you want to let out and play and take action. Um, so so that for me, it's helped me find this person, and which are many of the things I'm doing now. So, I've the book obviously was buried under there, and I didn't know that until after centering prayer. Going on, I've been on over 100 podcasts just to talk about my book and centering prayer. The idea of doing that would have scared the heck out of me prior to this. And I do a lot of public speaking, and I do some one-on-one coaching. So all of this was way out of my comfort zone. Actually, wasn't even on the radar screen. So before centering prayer, it was there, but it was on top of it was all this fear and anxiety and worry and
Right.
uncertainty. So centering prayer for me has helped me remove the clutter of all of these emotions that didn't help me, and then what's revealed is the things I should be doing. And I'm excited because who knows what else I should be doing that I'm not even aware of yet. So I just keep returning to my sits and hopefully clearing the clutter and letting new things be revealed that I should be doing and taking action on.
Now, I know that in your book also you talk about that sometimes whenever we are meditating and we're connecting in, sometimes it's us that we're hearing instead of God. So, how do you distinguish? How do you make sure that you're actually hearing from God?
Sure. So for me, I guess I'll call it my true self barometer. It seems to be
Yeah.
working for now. So, well, I guess I'm a big believer in affirmations. So I write down single sentence statements of things I want to do, whether it's related to my health or my finances or my website or my day job or my family and relationships. And then how I know that these are things I should be doing from a true self perspective are, there's an inner peace and calm about them. There's an excitement about them. They don't harm me. They don't harm others, and they get me out of my comfort zone. And maybe
Right.
sometimes they don't necessarily get me out of my comfort zone, but some of them do. So as long as they're in that category and I still continue to feel good about them, they stick. But if they start not feeling good, or I don't feel a peace about them, or I think maybe this is harming something with my family, and I'm spending too much time on this, and I need to be focusing on my marriage or on my children, then I realize, they're not, I don't think they're true self affirmations, or they're things I should be doing right now. So that's been my barometer, and it seems to have worked. And
Yes.
even it's as simple as either my wife or children also, saying something to me, and that's a signal as well that, what, maybe this true self thing or item needs to be put on pause right now.
Right, right. And I love that you said that, sometimes you'll hear information to get you out of your comfort zone. And a lot of times that's when the fear sets in and everything else. But I love that sometimes you've got to get over that. And sometimes this meditation will help you as well. Not only hear the message, but will kick you out of your comfort zone.
Right, right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so what I'm going to show everybody that is, on YouTube, you can see this, but it's Sitting with God. And Rich Lewis, and you can get this on Amazon or any of the bookstores. And you can, what is your website
Sil-
again?
sure, silenceteaches.com.
Okay. And I love that because silence is what you are preaching.
Right.
That I think is absolutely wonderful. Okay. And before we, do the last question of the show, what inspiration can you give to everybody that is listening?
I would just encourage people to try a daily dose of silence. And so, what I mean by that is, whether it's centering prayer or some type of practice, try it for 30 days. Make it the first thing you do in the morning, and maybe commit to 1 to 5 minutes, because I think that's doable. So, make it the first thing you do. Try it for 1 to 5 minutes. Commit to 30 days, and then after the 30 days, kind of look back and reflect on how did it go, and how did this practice go, and then maybe you'll want to continue. But try it
Oh,
for 30 days
absolutely.
and take it baby steps. Don't say, I don't think you have to do 30 minutes, because then you might decide, I don't want to do this. But if you try it for 1 to 5 minutes, you might decide, I love it, and I think I'm going to continue, and I'm going to just slowly increase the time.
So I guess patience is the word.
Right, right.
Not be patient in the process and also
Right.
in yourself, be patient with yourself. Because, like I said, whenever I was meditating right before, I kept talking, and it's like, okay, Michelle, stop. Now it's time to listen. Be patient with yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead, and you ready for the last question of the day?
Sure, sure.
All right, so let's go ahead and spin it
Okay.
and see what question. Again, this always makes it much, like a game show almost. All right. I can't see it until it pops up. Oh, well, see, you got, all right. So this is perfect for you. So, what is your favorite movie and why?
What is my favorite movie? That's a good question. I guess I'd have to say, the maybe all of them. I almost hate to narrow the Harry Potter movies, but maybe even the last one. They were just fun.
Yes.
They were just pure fun to watch, and you could kind of just like centering prayer, let go, enter it, and just
Mhm.
enjoy it. So really all of them, but the last one was fun, just because, and sentimental, because it was the last one. So I guess the Harry Potter movies, particularly the last one as well, because it was fun, it was longer, and it was very sentimental, and it was kind of the end of the wonderful
Yes.
journey with all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, did you grow up with the Harry Potter series?
I did. I remember. I mostly listened to the books, because the gentleman
Uh-huh.
that reads the books is a tremendous narrator, and he had a voice for all the characters. I think his name was Jim Dale. The man was incredible, because he had a voice for every character, and I don't know how he did it and how he remembered all the different voices. So actually listening to the book was more fun than reading the book, to be honest with you. And I used to, pre-COVID, driving to work, I listened to the book, that and many other books, but I remember listening to the Harry Potter books in my car.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, the reason why I asked you that is because the last one was really special for me as well,
Oh, okay.
because my kids grew up with it. and we would take the kids to the movie theater. And the last one, of course, they're out of the house and everything. And I just started crying because I'm thinking, oh, my kids are all grown up now.
Right,
That's
right.
the end of their childhood. So, okay. So, Rich, thank you so much for coming on. I have really enjoyed this conversation because, again, I think this book is really going to help people who want to meditate as Christians but are not able to, or they're kind of fearful to. This kind of opens up the book because, again, when they read your book, there are questions at the end of each chapter. They can reflect on it. They can look at Bible verses and scripture that really back this up. So, again, thank you for all of the work that you do.
No, thanks for having me on. And maybe it was perfect that I had an internet connection, so we took a moment of silence in the middle or beginning of this. So we did a centering prayer practice without realizing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes the audience has to do the same. So I agree. Everything happens for a reason. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.